From a Sasquatch stalking the edge of a homestead to horrifying discoveries deep in the woods, these are some of the clearest and most compelling pieces of footage ever recorded. Up first is the Provo Canyon encounter. This terrifying encounter begins with a couple hiking in the renowned Bigfoot hotspot of Provo Canyon. While they may not have been looking for a Sasquatch, they certainly find one. The couple spots the creature watching them from a concealed position before it then rises to its full height in what seems to be a threat. The hikers may not speak Sasquatch, but they do speak survival instinct, and they make a break for it the moment the creature begins to reach its full height. Since then, there have been several other sightings in Provo Canyon, including of a Sasquatch throwing rocks at another hiker. Next is Port Renfrew. Vancouver Island has many lush areas of wilderness, including around Port Renfrew, which seems to be one of the last locations of a Sasquatch population on the island. This hiker ended up coming across a very, very hairy situation, if you'll pardon my pun. There, just a dozen meters away, is a creature capable of tearing a tree apart with its bare hands, a creature that is known to hunger for meat. The Sasquatch doesn't seem to notice the hiker and instead is focused on harvesting something from a tree in front of it. Whether that's foliage or sap or grubs, we don't exactly know. Thankfully, this hiker was lucky enough to be able to retrace their steps and escape both without alerting the creature or being injured. Now, for a homesteading horror. Our homes are meant to be our safe spaces, but for homes out in the rural wilderness, there are dangers that can turn your entire homestead into a living horror. This family had been making strange sightings in the distance for some time, but it was after several weeks of unnerving sightings that they finally spotted the creature for sure. The large Sasquatch is seen watching from the edge of the clearing and is no doubt an intimidating sight. After the sighting, the family decided to take more proactive measures to protect themselves and began using fireworks and other loud bangs to ward off the creature, which has seemingly worked as they've made no sightings since. Now for the famed Clingman's Dome. The highest point in Tennessee is likely also one of the most southern points where Sasquatch can be seen. Sasquatch, being the North American species, tend to live in cool environments, their thick fur making life in warmer areas difficult except for set species. And so, in the southern reaches of their range, they often stay restricted to the mountains, where cold air and isolation gives them the best environment to live in. This footage was recorded by some hikers who stopped when they saw a whole crowd of people watching this tree line. The people had said they saw something like a bear walking on two legs, after which some of this stunning footage was captured. The eastern Sasquatch populations are considered to be under extreme threat as habitat loss and warming are putting a greater strain on these creatures to survive. Little else is known of the eastern population, as sightings of the western or midwest populations are simply far more common. Next up are forested remains. A group of hunters near the Banff National Park came across a horrifying encounter with a large Sasquatch nest adorned with the remains of unknown creatures, some of which could have been human. Instead of, I don't know, alerting the authorities, they decide to set up a trail cam watching over the nest, which does end up picking up some pretty incredible footage. We watch as the creature returns to its nest, and yet it can clearly sense something is wrong. It's likely Sasquatch do not have as good vision as us, but what they do have is a significantly better sense of smell. The Sasquatch ends up sniffing out the camera and rips it from the tree. However, the camera was recoverable the next day when the hunters returned for it. And finally, Marble Mountain. This footage was recorded by a leader of a youth group called Campus Life who made a yearly trip out to Marble Mountain. However, in 2001, something special would happen. First, the group would discover a strange shelter constructed in the forest, made of thick pine boughs and branches stacked to create a hovel large enough to fit two people or a single Sasquatch. But that wasn't the exciting part. Anyone could have made that shelter. The exciting part comes just a few minutes later when a student calls out that they see something up on the ridge. Way far off in the distance, walking along the ridge of Marble Mountain is some sort of giant bipedal creature. It's easily above the 8-foot mark, judging by the trees that it passes. However, unlike other sightings, this footage actually lasts for quite a long time. It watches the creature cross over the ridge and behind a rock outcropping. This has been considered by many to be among the most definitive pieces of proof available. Others, however, have claimed it's just someone wearing a big coat stumbling over a mountain ridge. What do you think? Up first, the spark to the flame. Sightings have been reported for centuries, but this was the first one to be caught on film and started all the Bigfoot hype way back in 1967. Recorded by filmmakers Rogers Patterson and Gimlin, they had been riding their horses down a Californian trail in the Buff Creek area searching for Bigfoot after reports of recent sightings when they had to dismount to cross over a fallen log. It was lucky that they had, because just as they were crossing, the very creature they were after began to cross in the far clearing. They did manage to set up the camera in time, and though it is initially shaky, they do capture several critical clear seconds. The footage even has a fairly decent resolution of the creature's head and fur, which seems very intriguing and possibly believable. Since then, many have tried to smear and discredit Patterson and Gimlin, but they continue to attest to the truth of the sighting. Next is the swamp monster. Josh Highcliffe was a hunter with a chunk of property 9 miles west of Tunica. On this fateful morning, however, Josh decided that he would be hunting hogs, and so got out into the swamp early that morning. Well before sunrise, he settled in and waited for the pigs to arrive, but it was a few hours later when he heard a shuffling sound and began to prepare to take a pig home. Instead, he would see a massive Sasquatch focused on an old dead cypress tree in the swamp. Immediately, Josh started recording and captured some of the most chilling footage I've ever seen. We truly get to see and hear the incredible strength of this creature as it appears to simply rip this tree trunk to shreds with its bare hands. Highcliffe ran the moment that he could and has allegedly not been back in the forest since. If it weren't for his posting on his own YouTube channel, which has no other videos, this footage likely would have never seen the light of day. Next is the Lettuce Lake legend. Matt initially thought this creature that he spotted while canoeing was a bear. However, after reviewing this footage with a park ranger, they determined that this couldn't be a bear. According to the park ranger, few bears, if any, ever went into the swamp. The creature was seen striding, swimming, and diving through the water, and did not seem to notice Matt at first. He has reason to believe that it also isn't a human, as what human would go diving in a fursuit in swamp water filled with 12-foot gators and water moccasins? Eventually, the creature does seem to notice Mark watching it and flees to deeper water before swimming away entirely. Could semi-aquatic swamp apes actually be real? No one expects to be watched by a Sasquatch while they work, but for this oil field worker, that's exactly what happened. He pulled up to a pipeline in the dead of winter to go through some simple diagnostic checks, and everything seems to be fine. He does his checks, gets back in his truck, and drives off. But that's when we see it. A massive 9-foot tall Sasquatch watching him from the trees. The creature has obviously been there for some time, as it's almost covered in fallen snow, and it's likely been keeping watch over a nearby family, protecting them from this oil worker. It's chilling to think that this worker could have been mere meters from a certain end, but thankfully he avoided a grisly fate. He has since apparently suffered harassment from an unknown figure who wants him to take down this footage. Next is the Nightwalker. This footage came from western Montana, released by a family that lives in a home on the edge of the woods. On this night, the family heard horrific screeches and screams coming from the forest, along with loud thumps, bangs, and so the father grabs a camera and, perhaps unwisely thinking he's the main character, goes out into the trees. He finds a shattered tree that seems to have been smashed to pieces with a rock. While continuing to move deeper into the woods, he then comes across it. Suddenly, and without warning, a massive Sasquatch appears briefly and peers out of the forest at the camera. This is paralyzing footage and is deeply unsettling. It's clear, given the distances involved, that this Sasquatch could easily charge across this short clearing and tear this man limb from limb, and yet it doesn't. It simply stares, grunts, blinks, and then vanishes back into the woods just as quickly as it appeared.
Did you catch that? Here it is, zoomed in and slowed down. So this footage comes from a man named Todd Standing. He's pretty well known in the Bigfoot enthusiast community. He's filmed a few pretty famous alleged pieces of Sasquatch footage, including this one here, which according to him was his first close-up sighting with one of the creatures. After the creature left, Todd and some of his crew apparently made their way up the cliff to try and determine how big this thing really was, and to them it looked like the thing may have been well over 8 feet tall. This footage was famous enough to show up on an episode of Finding Bigfoot, where they tried to recreate the footage by having one of the bigger guys on the team stand on the same ledge so they could try and get a sense of the creature's size in the video, and what they found was that the thing in the video was noticeably taller and bulkier. But ultimately, they couldn't definitively say whether Todd Standing's video was genuine or a hoax. This next video comes from Dee's Dark Adventures on YouTube. Seems she had a run-in with someone or something lurking in the trees while on a hike one night in Ohio. It starts when she sees a pair of eyes glaring at her from the shadows. She gets rightfully spooked and decides to make her way out of the forest, but whatever was watching her follows her. She makes it into a clearing and spots the thing again staring at her from the tree line. See how high up the eyes go when it stands up? At this point, she's in full panic mode and screams for whatever it is to just stop, but then it comes out from the trees and she can't tell if what she's looking at is a human or an animal of some kind. Creepy video. I like how she sounds genuinely terrified and panicked. And because it's Ohio, gotta wonder if that is the Ohio Grassman. Kind of their version of Bigfoot. Watch our Ohio videos to learn more about that. This is a really cool video. I mean, that thing looks terrifying. So this footage was taken on a stationary camera. I don't think anyone's standing there filming this. At least that's what we're led to believe here. I guess the idea is this was taken on a game camera or something, but clearly we see this big hairy man beast crouching in the bush. And when it stands up, it starts slamming logs and branches around. I don't know about you, but this is how I actually picture Bigfoot looking. It has this almost human face, but of course covered in this mane of unkempt fur. It's a creepy video, and we get a look at the thing for a good long time too. And not that it would be impossible for a regular person to lift a dead tree like that and slam it into the ground, but if this is a hoax, the person in the suit is pretty strong. So this is an impressive hoax, if it is one. I don't know. This footage was taken in southern Ontario, Canada by YouTuber Timber Giant Bigfoot. It's become a pretty well-known piece of video, sometimes referred to as the Big Red footage. This guy had his camera on the creature for a good stretch of time. This isn't just some blurry figure walking through the woods from like a mile away. Now, whatever the thing is, it looks big and hairy. Also doesn't really appear to be a bear. There really only are black bears in this part of the country, and this thing does not look like a black bear. Anyway, he has a bit of a hard time keeping his camera on the thing because he's zooming in from a fair distance. I wouldn't want to get too close either. He films for a good few minutes before the big creature gets up and walks off. What you're looking at here is footage taken by cryptozoologist Paul Freeman. Paul Freeman is still regarded as one of the most important investigators in the Bigfoot community. This video was captured in the Blue Mountains of Northeast Oregon in 1994, and it's often referred to as one of the best pieces of Sasquatch video evidence. Aside from this video, Paul Freeman was also well known for his plaster casts he made out of supposed Bigfoot tracks. The casts were studied quite a bit because they showed dermal ridges, and anthropologists like Jeff Meldrum of Idaho State University considered the casts highly credible pieces of possible evidence and put a lot of time and effort into studying them. As for this video, is it genuine, a hoax? It could go either way, but I like that we get a pretty good look at the creature here, enough to see a bit of a face rather than just a dark blur somewhere off in the distance. Well, we can't really call this thing Bigfoot, Littlefoot maybe, Sasquatch Jr. This footage was posted by a woman named Stephanie Wood to the Bigfoot Believers Facebook group. In her post, Stephanie shared this blurry image of what she claims could be a baby Sasquatch, or a squatchlet, a term sometimes used to describe smaller, more elusive Bigfoot-like creatures. Along with the original photo, she posted a cropped close-up of the figure, saying that while the first instinct might be to dismiss it as a person in a costume, after a closer inspection, she's just not sure. She wrote, "Could this be a baby Sasquatch, or one of those hairy little people that pop up in reports every now and then?" Now, what I'd like to ask is, sorry, who are these little hairy people that pop up in reports every now and again? My brain needs to learn more about this. Anyway, some commenters are convinced by the photo, with one person claiming that the deer in the foreground really makes it more believable, and I gotta say, I didn't think of this at first, but I think I agree. It's not easy to get that close to a deer. They'll usually just have run off long before you get a chance to get this distance from it, let alone pose for a photo like this, but maybe deer are more comfortable with young Sasquatches. So I remember this one really creeping me out when I first saw it over a decade ago. The story here is that this video was taken in Carbondale, Pennsylvania, where residents had apparently been reporting strange sightings and eerie noises at night, with some even spotting a creature resembling Bigfoot. But this creature was different. It was described as being white in color, more like a Yeti. One local homeowner managed to capture this video of the creature after hearing a disturbance in their backyard, which is surrounded by dense woods. Now, some people are kinda thrown by the cameraman's reaction here. He sees this furry white monster dashing through the trees at night, and his reaction is a pretty casual sounding, "What was that?" Well, some commenters disagree, saying the subdued reaction actually sounds pretty convincing. One commenter wrote, "As far as the reaction of the photographer, 'What was that?' it's not too hard to understand. When looking out in the darkness, things are not as easily recognizable. Also, he does not have the luxury of viewing the creature on YouTube in slow motion, and the mind barely has time to make a judgment of what it is." But what are your judgments on this one? Let us know down below. This video was taken in Algonquin Park, Ontario, Canada in 2010 with a bumper mounted GoPro. Zooming in and slowing things down, you can clearly see a large dark figure standing by the side of the road. Now, the video was taken by an unnamed man who sent it to the Ontario Wildlife Research Bigfoot group, who released it. One interesting point that a YouTuber named Snowwalker Prime made, who analyzed and reposted this footage, is that walking around in a gorilla suit in this neck of the woods really is ill-advised. You could easily get mistaken for a bear and get taken out by a hunter. So if this is a hoax, it's a kind of dangerous one. What I also like about this footage is that the original video was over an hour long. The guy filming apparently took lots of videos of his drives through the area. This was just one small piece edited down, and it just makes the footage a little more convincing. Plus, the figure does not look human. If that is a suit, it's a really good one. It's got those long arms, it's big, it's a good one. This video was taken in Alaska, posted to the YouTube channel Patua76, who wrote in the description, "I was on a logging road in Ketchikan hiking with my friend when I saw it. Boy, did my heart start racing. I was about 40 yards from the road, not sure if it knew I was there or not because of the noise flowing from water from the stream. It seemed to travel fast. It made my hair stand up. At one point you can see a whitish yellowish thing in its hand. You could see it jump, and after that point it just seems to disappear. There was a lot of brush and trees between it and I. I could not tell where it had gone. It was a scary, sort of exciting feeling at the same time. We went to search for tracks, but the riverbed where we thought it was walking was full of perfect skipping rocks. We found no prints." Now, after filming the creature walking behind a tree, the cameraman loses sight of it, and after scanning the trees for a bit, he decides to get out of there. And yeah, the last thing you'd want is to see a Bigfoot and then not know where it is around you. That's a scary idea. So I don't have a lot of info on this last one, only that it was captured by a group of hikers in Colorado. Take a look at this. Alright, so a pretty hectic video, right? The camera is shaky as hell. We only get a quick glimpse of the creature before it runs into the brush. But all the same, the thing does look massive. And let's be honest, if you found yourself in this situation, would you really be holding the camera perfectly steady and getting like Stanley Kubrick level steady shots of the thing? Yeah, probably not. I'd love to know more about this video, so if anyone has any info, let me know down below. And what are your thoughts on Sasquatch and Bigfoot, Yeti, and whatever other hairy creatures you know of? Let us know down below.
I'm not gonna lie, this is impressive, fake or not. The everyday person is not able to lift a 30 to 50 pound pine tree like that and swing it over its head. Unless someone was purposely training in the gym like that with a barbell, which is roughly the same weight. But this thing picks it up like it's a baseball bat, swings it up and brings it down hard on another stack of branches. I was watching this video and was feeling a little anxious myself. When it looks at the camera, that's where it kind of loses me, because it looks a little too human-like, but has one of the most intense stares I've ever seen as it locks eyes with us down the barrel of the camera. I couldn't tell you why he's ripping up the forest like this. You know, maybe he's building a little nest to attract some pretty female Bigfoot tests. Even at the end, this guy's height is quite huge, and he's standing next to pine trees. I'm not good at measuring by eye, so I'm gonna leave y'all to figure that one out. Overall, very entertaining video, despite it possibly being fake, because I was impressed by the raw strength. Ain't nothing like the comfort of driving in the middle of the night on a road that's covered in snow, making it even more difficult to even attempt at trying to drive away if something came after you. Thankfully, nothing does for these guys, who apparently spotted a Yeti, which is a part of the same family as a Bigfoot, fun fact, in Russia. This was all caught on camera with their dash cam, and on their drive, spotted, at least what it appears to me, a man ran and jumped over a snowbank, crossed the road, and into the darkness whence it came. This one doesn't appear as tall as the one in the first video, and it looks to be around my height. Maybe a younger Yeti? If my height is considered to be an average height of a baby Yeti, I'm going to scream. I think it's clear though that this wasn't CGI at least, because as they get closer to where they spotted the monster, we even get to see the footprints it left behind. At first, it looks like they didn't even realize the footprints were there until they stopped the car and reversed themselves to get a better look. Personally, that's an interesting little thing to have, because the majority of fake videos would either end at the sighting, but adding in such a natural human gesture like that of taking a double take of the footprints just seemed really intriguing to me. It just feels right to include more of the Yeti Bigfoot in these videos due to it being December and around Christmas time. The clip is pretty straightforward. We see what appears to be a white speck make its way across the side of a cliff at a pretty decent speed, and not the usual tempo that people struggle with while their feet are being absolutely vacuumed by the frozen water beneath them. The creators of this video also included some interesting footage of the supposed footprints around the area where it was seen. But this is where it loses me, because when they zoom in on the prints, sure, they look pretty cool at first, but footprints don't usually appear like they're walking on a tightrope. You gotta stagger them, not make them completely straight. I will give you props though, because I'm finding it difficult to how you would have managed to pull it off without leaving any prints yourself. Drone mayhaps? Another beefy boy, but this time he's got some red coloring unlike the usual black majority of us are used to. This video was uploaded to the channel Sasquatch Confessions, so I think the original filmer was left anonymous. From how I'm seeing it, the guy filming happened to find the Sasquatch on a trail path and had originally mistaken it for a bear until it got up and walked away. It seemed to know he was there. I mean, yeah, you're in an open area and you're pointing a camera directly at him, I would notice you too. And then this alleged beast gets up to leave. He is quite the size. Tall? Not so much, but wide? Oh yes, he's got that moto build. Dare I say, he also looks mighty cuddly too. He looks like he's in his bulking phase for hibernation, and I can only imagine the hug I could give this thing. As for convincing me, I'm not sure, because he kind of walks away like he's a giant puppet. No arm swing, no stretching of muscles as he moves. The uploader of this video has the YouTube channel named Gulf Island Rock and titled this finding as Bigfoot Sasquatch sighting near Port Renfrew on Vancouver Island. All that's really given to us is the view of this guy's hairy gray back. Points for giving us another new color to see. Really refreshes the brain after a while of just seeing a sea of black fur. I was really waiting on something exciting for a video that was almost 2.5 minutes long. I was almost hoping the beast would turn around, see the camera guy, and just start chasing him. Something to keep the viewers engaged, you know? If it's fake, the costume design is pretty well done. It doesn't look like those cheap Party City animal outfits where you can see the plastic shine under the light. I give it a good 4 out of 5 on the cosplay aspect, but a 2 out of 10 for intriguing footage. No offense. I'm not the one to judge Bigfoot and what he consumes, but drinking water out of the swamp? You must have a gut of steel to be able to stomach that. All its dangerous organisms and probably leeches that live in there? It seems like this person was on a canoe or something trying to get this shot, because why would you dare walk bare in it? And manage to catch an alleged Bigfoot taking a sip of the yummy swamp water, and then ends up getting a little too silly and starts splashing around in the water. He's just a silly little creepy guy. If this is also some wild animal though, the person who filmed this should be considered lucky that it didn't start charging its way over. This one also seems much smaller than the other Bigfoots we've seen, because I'm always expecting a guy who's at least 10 feet with their feet bigger than my head. This is more like a medium foot from my scientific perspective. What is the sudden wave of these baby foots? We want to see big boys towering over us, whacking pine trees around like the first video. I want to be so scared that I never want to step foot into the woods again. again. Speaking of, these guys seem to have stumbled upon an itty-bitty Sasquatch on a hike somewhere in the Provo Canyon. It doesn't seem to notice them until closer to the end of the video, where the alleged creature stands up and terrifies our crew of hikers. Yes, shaking running camera footage never fails to make the adrenaline rise. Works in every found footage horror movie. But come on guys, this thing doesn't even look that big. It doesn't even have the same muscle mass as the other monsters in this video. I'm not convinced, and I'm disappointed. Show me the big back boys! Here we go, some more big backs. But sadly, this clip is so short, I am unable to fully be immersed in this experience with the uploader. I will give props though that the atmosphere setup for this footage is perfect. We got the fog, we got the cloudy sky that's making it look darker, and we got the snow that reminds us about all the absolute decay that surrounds us. Perfect Yeti footage. This guy looks like a giant snowball because of his round shape and white fur. Another Bigfoot to add onto my list for cuddling. For once, I gotta say I wish this video was a bit more clear. You did a bit too much on the scuff for this one. I can't even make out what the creature is doing to even describe it to y'all. Is it bent over? Is it making snowballs to hurl at you? But I will say, get the heck out of the open area. You are leaving yourself too vulnerable for these things to come and grab you, which you thankfully seem to realize at the end when you freak out and run away. As you should. Our curiosity should only be nurtured for so long.
Starting us off today, we have two campers, Jan and Larry, who claim to have been attacked by Bigfoot while out camping. Like James maybe one day. The pair had encountered another group of campers, some of which had claimed to have seen Bigfoot in the area on previous occasions, including the night before. Around midnight, all the campers went back to their respective tents. Jan and Larry had just zipped up their own tent when they began hearing footsteps coming from the bushes. Before Larry had the chance to check out where the noise was coming from, the sides of his tent began to shake. The Bigfoot was attacking them, aggressively clawing, scratching, pushing, and pulling at the tent. Eventually it moved on, but Jan and Larry will never forget that day. The pair claimed that there are 7 separate Bigfoots living in the area, and they've actually seen and heard the creature on separate occasions too, and they were able to capture photos of the Sasquatch's tracks. The name of the campsite was not disclosed, but the incident happened somewhere in Wisconsin, so do with that information what you will.
This next case comes out of Colorado. So back in 2015, a couple were driving on a desolate road late at night when they felt something bump into their car. They backed up a bit to see what they'd hit, praying that it wasn't a person, but they never expected to see what they saw. They spotted a dark shape on the road, looking like it could have been a bear. They pulled out a phone and started filming their rear view camera, and this is what they captured. Now, whatever this thing is, it's only on camera briefly, but pausing and taking a look at the thing fully upright, rushing towards the car, it looks pretty big. It's hard to get a sense of how big it is because it's pretty far away, but it looks to be taking up quite a big part of that one lane, and it looks fairly tall. What do you guys think though? Sasquatch, dude in a costume, a bear that's maybe learned to move like a human? Let us know down in the comments.
Next up, we have Teddy Roosevelt's retelling of a Bigfoot encounter as told to him by a German hunter named Baumann. The hunter Baumann, along with his friend, had gone out into the remote section of the Montana wilderness with one goal: to trap beavers. The men were likely the only hunters in the woods at the time because, as a general rule of thumb, hunters tended to avoid the area after a fellow trapper had been found mauled in the woods a few months prior. Baumann and his friends did not care. They set up camp and went out to lay their traps, but when they returned to their campsite, it was ransacked. Thinking the mess had been left by a bear, the two didn't really think much of it. Bowman began cooking dinner, and his partner left to investigate some tracks they'd seen. They were massive, and it was clear the creature had been walking on 2 legs. When the pair eventually settled into their tents for the night, they were weary, and rightfully so. They were awakened by an awful smell and the sound of branches breaking around their tent. The following day, the men decided to leave the area. Bowman went to gather the beaver traps while his partner packed up the camp. But when Bowman returned to the campsite, he was greeted by a horrific scene. His friend's body was laid out across the ground with a broken neck and bite marks all over. Bowman knew his friend was dead, and so he hightailed it out of there and lived to tell the tale.
Our next story comes to us from a deleted Reddit user who described their first-hand encounter with what they believe was a Sasquatch. The story goes as follows. follows. So I was on this solo hike near a remote trail in the forest of Oregon. It was a beautiful day, sunny with a hint of a cool breeze, perfect for exploring nature. I've been on this trail before, but today something felt off from the get-go. About an hour into my hike, I started hearing these loud whooping sounds echoing through the trees. At first I brushed it off as some animal calls or maybe even other hikers goofing around, but the thing is, the sound was so intense, almost like they were coming from multiple directions at once. As I kept walking, the whoops turned into something more unsettling. They sounded closer, for one. Then I heard the snapping of branches coming from up the slope, like someone or something was trudging through the underbrush nearby. I stopped in my tracks, trying to listen more closely. That's when I saw rocks being hurled down from above. Luckily, I wasn't near or close enough for them to hit me. Now my fight or flight was kicking in. I couldn't see anything through the thick foliage, but whatever was making those noises was definitely close. My heart was pounding in my chest. I turned around and booked it. I didn't catch a glimpse of whatever was out there, but I can tell you it was the most terrifying experience I've ever had while hiking.
Next up, we have the Bigfoot attacks in the Valley of the Headless Man, which is actually in Canada. The attacks began in 1908. The bodies of two headless men appeared in the river of the valley. In 1945, another corpse was found headless again, and years later, a man was found in his sleeping bag, again with no head. While this might seem like the work of some senseless killer, it's important to note that natives in the area fled the land a few years prior to the first deaths, and other native tribes have actively avoided the lands for centuries. Perhaps they knew something those poor men who lost their heads didn't. Many people who have visited the area reported finding large bipedal animal tracks, hearing loud roars and breaking branches, and smelling sulfur and rotten fish, despite being quite far off from the riverbeds. All telltale signs that Bigfoot is near.
Next on the list is the Portlock Bigfoot attacks. Portlock is an abandoned town in Alaska, and as for why it's abandoned, there are a few explanations, one of which has to do with reported attacks of giant hairy ape-like creatures. So in the 40s, the small community of Portlock, Alaska, had a string of unsettling incidents. Doll sheep hunters were disappearing, grisly discoveries of dismembered bodies were being found in the lagoon, and reports were coming in about encounters with an entity known locally as Nantinak, Bigfoot. There have been tales about Bigfoot, or Big Feet, as Hannah refers to them as, in Alaska for decades, and many still believe it's these creatures that caused the town to be abandoned. By 1949, the community of Portlock had dropped as residents left for neighboring villages. Residents have come out with tales of encountering enormous footprints, spotting a towering, hairy figure lurking in the woods, and discovering mutilated bodies of those who ventured into the wilderness.
Next up, we have an anonymous story that was shared with SasquatchChronicles.com by a UK woman who was visiting California on business when she stumbled upon something wild. Well, actually two something wilds, because believe it or not, while on a hike, the woman had walked right into the path of two massive Bigfoots. At first, she assumed that what she was looking at were some kind of mountain lions, but when the creature stood up on 2 feet, she realized that wasn't the case. These animals were easily over 7 feet tall. They were working together to collect seaweed. They were like eating the roots and then rubbing the seaweed on their fur. I don't know. They were by the waterway where the woman had been hiking. The woman pulled out her camera to snap a few photos, but before she could, the cover on her camera lens fell and it made its way down to where the animals had been. The larger of the two was furious. He began charging at the woman, and she thought for sure that these were her last moments, but the smaller of the two intervened. The two screeched at each other for a while, almost like they were speaking in some kind of gibberish language, before they retreated back to the woods. The woman somehow made her way quickly back to her car. She really can't remember the walk there. She was so dazed, but she feels lucky to be alive. However, she regrets not getting that photograph.
Next on the list, we have the Ape Canyon case. So this incident from 1924 is a tale from the Pacific Northwest of the United States that's become one of the most famous Sasquatch sightings in cryptozoology circles. According to the story, a group of miners claimed to have encountered a group of large, almost 7 foot tall, hairy, ape-like creatures in the vicinity of Mount St. Helens in Washington. The incident supposedly took place in Ape Canyon, which is what it's now called. A group of miners led by Fred Beck claimed to have been attacked by these mysterious creatures. Beck and his companions said that they had shot at the creatures in self-defense after being pelted with rocks, and later a bunch of these hairy creatures retaliated by attacking their cabin. The miners went outside the following day to find giant-sized footprints in the ground. Some believe the creatures described by Beck and his group were Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, or Big Feet, while others think it was all just a big, elaborate hoax.
What is the plural of Bigfoot, you guys? Let me know in the comments. Next up, we have the attack of the Hoax monster. That's not a swear word, that's the name of the monster. And don't come for me, but it's basically Arkansas's version of Bigfoot, or Arkansas, as James would say. The Hoax monster, also known as the Boggy Creek monster or the Swamp Stalker, is a massive bipedal ape-like creature with massive feet and a foul smell. Sound familiar? Exactly. In the spring of 1971, two young couples moved into the town of Folk, Arkansas, and rented a small house near a creek. It wasn't long before the couples noticed something wasn't right. They would often hear heavy footsteps coming from their front porch, and one night it seemed as though some kind of animal was attempting to gain access to their home. As the days went on, the pairs would often find massive three-toed footprints in the area around their house. And then one evening, they saw the creatures, massive, shaggy, smelly, standing tall on 2 feet. The creature again attempted to gain entry to the couple's homes, but one of the men fired at the creature, causing it to turn on the other man, who was badly injured and required medical attention after the ordeal. The police got involved, but were unable to locate the massive animal. And this event actually marks the only medically documented attack by a cryptid on a human in North America. So, it's legit, you guys.
Next we have more footage of a Bigfoot chasing a car, this time in Russia. Now, I say Bigfoot, there's a very good chance it's just a dude in a costume, or just some crazy person chasing the car, because it's that low quality of a video, like pretty much all Sasquatch videos are. So the footage was taken in 2016, and we see someone filming the side of a rural road with their phone camera. The people already sound frantic, like they've seen something before they started filming. Then you see this dark figure start ambling towards the car, and they drive off. But then they decide to stop the car and try to see if they can get a good shot of the creature again. Take a look.
Он бежит. Лёша, кто закрыл?
And we're kicking off this list with a very recent Ohio Bigfoot report. This one is detailed on the BFRO, or the Bigfoot Field Researchers website, where there are tons of different eyewitness reports of the elusive beast. But this is a good one to start off with because it just happened back in January of this year. On January 22nd, on a snowy afternoon in Warren County, Ohio, a family reported seeing a big creature standing near a bike path while they were driving down the road. The father of the family wrote, "As we were driving along State Route 350 towards State Route 123, south of Oregonia, we came to the Loveland bike trail that runs next to the Little Miami River. As I slowed down near the bike path crossing, we looked out the passenger side of the car and saw a large black figure standing a distance up the bike path facing the river while it was snowing. The ground was covered with at least 3 inches of snow, so it didn't appear that someone would be on the bike path biking or walking the trail. The weather was not ideal for anyone to be hunting or walking on the path at the time. The figure appeared to have come from the woods and was walking towards the river." He also described the figure as having no obvious clothing pattern, being consistently dark, and that his wife and 2 teenage children also spotted it. There have apparently been at least 9 credible sightings of a supposed Bigfoot-like creature in the same area too. Number 9, Bigfoot howls. In this video uploaded by We Do It Outdoors, we see our cameraman roaming through a forest in Lore City, Ohio. The sun is starting to set and we hear a series of strange eerie howls and tree knocks. We Do It Outdoors seems to have started as a channel about maintaining lawns, but over the last few years, there have been a number of Bigfoot related videos uploaded on there, one of which I may or may not be discussing later in the list. And whether they're real or not, some of them are pretty entertaining. We get some genuinely creepy sounds in this video. It definitely sounds like something or someone is howling in the distance. If I heard sounds like this while I was in the forest, I'd just turn right around immediately. This guy sticks around until it's like fully dark, and the sounds just get louder and louder. Real or not, it's definitely a creepy video. Number 8, the Jefferson County report. Next up, I have another report detailed on the Bigfoot Field Researchers website. This incident was reported in July of 2021, still pretty recent, in Jefferson County, Ohio. A man describes finding a large footprint in his chicken coop, as well as all of his chickens having gone missing. He's quoted saying, "On July 9th at approximately 10 a.m., I noticed my 5 chickens were missing. The chicken coop was full of feathers, but no bodies or blood. I did a perimeter check and came across an extremely large footprint. I went back to the house and brought down a tape measure to the footprint and measured it and took pictures with the tape measure beside it. The footprint measured a length that was apparently 18 inches with a width of about 9 to 10 inches. A Bigfoot investigator named Jim Thompson came to investigate the man's property and discovered more footprints that were about 4 feet apart from one another. That's about double the gait of an average person, by the way. On July 24th, a couple weeks after making his initial report, the man described hearing strange yelps coming from either end of his property, as if they were yelping back and forth to each other. And he also said that on some nights he gets an eerie feeling that something is watching him. I have that almost every night too. At number 7, we have Susan Ferenchak. Suzanne Ferenchak is a former skeptic turned Bigfoot enthusiast. After spotting a strange hairy creature near her home in Loudonville, Ohio, she had first spotted what she described as a big black-furred creature jump over the road. Not sure where said road was exactly, or what type of road it was. If it was a highway road, that would be nuts. It was just a small dirt road. Still scary, not quite as impressive though. Suzanne has recorded audio of what she believes to be a Sasquatch while out in the wilderness near her home, and has shared the 2-minute clip online. I give it a listen. The quality, not great, but it's definitely eerie. You hear this distant howling. It definitely doesn't sound like a wolf. You also get some classic, whoops in there too, which a lot of Bigfoot researchers describe Sasquatches, making. Whether it's a genuine Bigfoot or not, I really just dig supposed Bigfoot audio. I just imagine being out alone in the woods at night and hearing some distant wail and whooping, and human or not, I mean, it'd be pretty bone-chilling. All right, now I'm going to share the last report from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. At least for this video anyway, there are tons on the site. This one was reported in Mahoning County, Ohio in July of 2021. Sorry if I'm messing up the pronunciation there. A man had described seeing a strange creature one evening after returning home with his wife, and is quoted as saying, "Tonight, yet another sighting by our pond. My wife and I were at dinner, and as we arrived home about 8:30 p.m., a large, fast, gray and silver, light brown, covered in fur Bigfoot darted from the bushes in our front into the cattails in our pond on all fours. We both looked at each other and said, 'Did you just see that?' The subject was down low and bent in the middle as it moved. Unlike a dog, its undulating movement was not as fluid as a dog. It was not a bear. It appeared to be from 4 to 5 feet at the back and torso built like a barrel. When it went into the cattails, we were no longer able to see it." Number 5, the 1992 Grassman sighting. Grassman is again the name often given to the big ape-like creature or creatures that so many Ohio locals have spotted. And in this video, taken in eastern Ohio in 1992 by a man named Don Keating, he had spotted what looked like a large hairy creature walking into the forest. He managed to capture it on camera, and though the footage is very grainy and he was a fair distance away from it, there is definitely something walking into the forest. It's not the most convincing video evidence. It's hard to tell what you're looking at, but I do always find something eerie about old 90s VHS footage, and Keating seems to believe he saw some kind of large cryptid. So this video was featured on Monster Quest and features an interview with Keating describing what he saw and that he was a skeptic before this encounter. I always like it when they say they were skeptics before, because, you know, it's a bit more convincing that way. At number 4, we have the famous Minerva monster case. Back in 1978, a family living in Minerva, Ohio, reported what they believed to be a large Bigfoot-esque cryptid around their home. The Caton family reported rocks being thrown at their home by the creature and would spot large footprints in their backyard. But there are other reports of a mysterious creature in the area around the same time. The Caton's neighbor also spotted the big hairy creature, as well as other residents of the area. The case became known as the Minerva Monster Case and gained rather significant media attention at the time. A former Stark County sheriff named Jim Shannon, who had responded to one of the Caton family's reports, is quoted as saying, "They were terrified. I will always believe them. They saw something. It's just, what did they see?" This case has become the subject of a 2015 documentary called Minerva Monster, directed by Seth Breedlove, who we might be talking about in a bit. Next up, we have Mark DeWerth. Mark DeWerth is a Ohio Bigfoot investigator who has collected a fair amount of evidence in the 30 years he's spent on the hunt. He's got footprints, audio recordings, and of course his first-hand encounter, which was the catalyst for his research. The story is he'd been exploring an old strip mine in search of badger dens, was followed out by something which soon stood up and looked at him, a big bipedal hairy creature. If that happened to me, I would not go looking for the creature again. I would move out of Ohio the next morning probably. The thought of an 8-foot tall hairy beast roaming through the woods has always been kind of creepy to me, but having one stare at you in a cave, imagine looking through a cave thinking all you're gonna see that day is maybe some badgers, and then you're met with an 8-foot tall hairy ape man glaring at you. Only I'm allowed to find badgers in this cave. Whether the story is true or not, definitely a terrifying image. A video shared by Spectrum News shows Mark talking to several residents of Warren County, Ohio about his experience with this elusive creature, as well as hearing some of their first-hand accounts. He plays an audio recording, which sounds, again, pretty creepy. I love me some Bigfoot audio recordings. Anyway, Mark DeWerth has been interviewed on tons of podcasts discussing his Sasquatch experiences, so seek those out if you're interested. And at number 2, we have the Seth Breedlove encounter. Seth Breedlove is a filmmaker who's gone on to shoot a series called the Bigfoot Project, which you can find on a YouTube channel called Small Town Monsters. Before he had his first encounter, Seth described himself as a skeptic. In a YouTube video uploaded by Ed Ballant, Seth recounts the time he first encountered what he believes to be a Bigfoot. Seth had been riding down the countryside of Minerva, Ohio, when he spotted what looked to be a large bipedal creature with brown hair running through a clearing on a hill about 50 yards away. And it was fast, clearing the space in less than a second. One of the things that really stuck out to Seth most was the creature's very noticeable musculature, especially in the bicep area. Listening to Seth talk, he doesn't sound like he genuinely believes what he saw. He doesn't seem like he's making anything up on the spot or anything. Whether it was indeed the missing link or something more benign, he definitely did see something. And coming in at our number 1 spot is the Salt Fork footage. This video, once again uploaded by the YouTube channel We Do It Outdoors, is only 10 minutes long, but there's a lot going on with this one. So 2 men were exploring Salt Fork State Park in eastern Ohio, and after hearing some strange noises, they happened to capture footage of what looks to be a large bipedal hairy animal. We have a few different pieces of evidence in this video. We have handheld footage of the creature moving through the trees. We have some drone footage, lots of sounds too. It's a very meaty video. Now, could it be a big guy in a suit? Look, it can always be a big guy in a suit, but I gotta say, if it is a suit, it's not a bad one. It's pretty good. It looks like it has some bulk to it. It doesn't look like just one of those generic gorilla suits you can pick up at Spirit Halloween. And what I like here is that the footage is clear. He's not relying on shaking the camera around or making the video extra grainy to try and obscure the image. And just for those reasons alone, I like this video, even if it isn't real. We also hear some vocalizations going on here, so like I said, it's just a lot happening? Check this one out over at We Do It Outdoors. And we're starting off the list with the Alabama sighting. So I tried to throw in some recent sightings for this list because we've all seen the famous Patterson footage. It's cool, but good to change things up a bit. So this one was reported by an elderly couple in Claiborne County, Alabama, and was posted on the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization website. The witnesses stated, "My husband and I heard strange sounds for 2 nights in February of 2023 and laughed about how they sounded like the Bigfoot sounds on television shows. The 3rd night at dusk, we were in our carport looking into the woods that border our property in Helphin, Claiborne County, Alabama. We saw what looked like Bigfoot peeking around a tree at us. We watched it for approximately 5 minutes as it appeared to look at us from the left and then right of the tree trunk. I dismissed it as being a distortion within the trees and wind, turned to go into the house and looked back and distinctly saw what could only be Bigfoot running away. I yelled for my husband and he also saw it running away. It had our hearts beating wildly and the hair standing up on our arms. There was no mistaking what we saw." At our number 9 spot, we have our first piece of Squatch footage for you. In this clip, you can clearly see a very large hairy creature strolling through a wooded area. Now, what I like about this one is the shape of the creature. If this is someone in a costume, it's a pretty good one. It doesn't have the proportions of a human. It's very gorilla-like. This is a thick Squatch too, packing some gains in the tushy area. But also the back is massive and its head is like hunched in front. With so many supposedly real Bigfoot sightings videos, like the quote-unquote Bigfoot rarely looks like it's carrying the weight of a massive sized hominid. Usually Bigfoot videos just look very blurry to make sense of anything too, or when you do see the creature, it just lacks the bulk that's often reported in first-hand Bigfoot accounts, just like a person in a cheap gorilla suit. But this one doesn't look human. A solid video, even if it is a hoax. At number 8, we have the Minerva monster case. In 1978, in Minerva, Ohio, the Caton family reported encountering a large, Bigfoot-like creature near their home. Their account included rocks thrown at their house and the discovery of enormous footprints in their backyard. Their dog was also mysteriously died, just mauled. This was not an isolated incident though. Several neighbors and other residents in the area also claimed sightings of a similar hairy creature around that same time, and this series of encounters became widely known as the Minerva monster case, drawing significant media attention. Jim Shannon, a former Stark County sheriff who had responded to one of the Caton family's distress calls, expressed his belief in their reports, stating that they were terrified. "I will always believe them that they saw something. It's just, what did they see?" At number 7, we have another recent sighting, also posted to the BFRO, this time in Wisconsin. The sighting happened on May 28th, 2023. A woman had been driving down a road in the early morning in Oconto County when she spotted the creature. This area in northern Oconto County, Wisconsin, is mostly wooded with swamp near the Oconto River. As I near the corner, I saw a black and brown large figure of a man that I thought may have been someone that broke down on the trail as it was walking south towards Peshtigo Brook Road. I stopped at the corner as I could not believe what I was looking at, trying to wrap my head around it and convince myself it was a man, as it was walking on 2 legs and had taken from what I saw about 10 steps toward me. However, there was no sound, no yelling for help or waving the arms, and no human-colored skin. It was in fact a dark black and brown figure with large legs and even at the base towards the feet. It was hairy. It was not a bear though, and it was not a human. I looked around the corner and could see in the distance down North Branch Road that a human was walking east towards me in that direction. I then looked back and the large black-brown figure went into the ditch and disappeared. I was convinced it had to be a Sasquatch. Number 6. Help, I think I saw a skunk ape. This video was posted to YouTube by Josh Highcliffe and is probably one of the most convincing Bigfoot, or in this case technically skunk ape, pieces of footage in recent years. The video was taken about 9 miles west of Tunica, Mississippi at around 6 p.m. in October of 2013. Josh had been hunting for hogs when he spotted the creature. He'd been sitting on a log waiting for the sun to go down when he heard strange noises coming from behind him, and when he turned around, he spotted this large, dark, furry creature digging out the stump of a dead tree. Now, I gotta say, I try to be skeptical when it comes to things like this. Cryptids, ghosts, whatever. But this video is pretty convincing. That looks like an animal messing around in the forest to me. Creepiest part is when the thing stands up and you see that it's way taller than you thought. And it was at this point that our cameraman was convinced that this was not a bear and decided to get the hell out of there. Number 5, Backyard Bigfoot. The following is a story shared to Reddit by user Bigfoot Watcher. Post is from 9 years back, and they wrote the following. 2 nights ago, my boyfriend went out to take the dogs out back. My one dog started barking like crazy right away. My boyfriend had a flashlight and quickly scanned the grass line where the woods start, where we normally see deer. Our house is bordered by woods. Something made him shine a bit higher, and he sees 2 eyes staring back at him, about 9 feet off the ground. As my boyfriend tries to hurry the dogs back inside, he sees the thing turn and casually walk back into the woods like a man, with arms and shoulders. I've never seen my boyfriend so freaked out. He came inside and closed every single window and all the blinds, and refuses to let the dogs out in the backyard at night anymore. In hindsight, there have been a few instances in the past few weeks that we can't explain, like dogs' toys being down by the woods with bites taken out, but it was the placement of the toys and whatnot that makes us wonder. Also, a grunt snort noise we heard recently. My boyfriend cannot get over the size of this thing and the fact that the eyes were so high off the ground. I asked him if he thought he saw Bigfoot, and he said after a minute or so of silence, if I wasn't a believer before, I sure as hell am one now. Next on the list, we have the nighttime Bigfoot. I'm not 100% sold on this next clip, but it is pretty harrowing at the same time. Check this out. So you have people filming in the woods in the middle of the night. They've obviously heard something because they're scanning the woods with their camera, trying to spot whatever it is. And then this pops up. A big, hairy Sasquatch creature with a really creepy looking face. One little touch I like about this video is that you actually see it blink. It definitely makes it more convincing. I feel like if I saw this, I wouldn't be sticking around though. After the creature trudges back into the trees, they just kind of stand there breathing heavily. But I don't know, maybe they were shocked, frozen in fear. Anyway, what do you think of this one? Let me know in the comments. At number 3, we have another account posted to the BFRO. This one happened in September of 2018 in Whitmore, California. The man described his experience as follows. I was driving up to work from Redding. I worked at a school in Whitmore, California, and Shasta County. That was only accessible from a logging road. As I was going up the mountain, I rounded a corner, and about 300 feet from me and maybe 400 feet from Tintago Lane, a tall, hairy creature, dark brown with some gray along the back shoulders, walking on 2 legs, crossed the road, which is wide enough for 2 cars to pass each other, in about 2 steps, and then was in the woods. The hair on the back of my neck instantly stood up, and I was terrified. I had my 11-month-old son in the back seat, and I drove to campus as quickly as I could. There were major wildfires in the area at this time. Maybe it was trying to get away from the fires or incredibly unhealthy smoke. Several of my coworkers on that campus have had experiences as well. Alright, this next video was uploaded to the YouTube channel Beard Card in 2012 and has since received millions of views. A group of friends had gone camping in Provo Canyon. They'd seen some deer on a hill and went to get a closer look. There they spotted what they thought was a bear. You can hear them whispering to each other in the video. I mean, like seeing a bear, that would obviously be pretty nerve-wracking as is. But then the thing stands up, and once again, it becomes very clear that what they are looking at is not a bear. The thing is very wide. It doesn't look like it has the proportions of a human at all, at least not a regular sized one. It really, I don't know, just the idea of seeing something in the woods, you don't know what it is. This video really gets that across, and the reactions just seem genuine, like, oh, like they thought it was a bear the entire time, and then it stands up and they're like, okay, go. Anyway, coming in at number 1, we have the Harley Hoffman footage. I remember seeing this clip years ago. It was edited into an interview with Harley Hoffman, a Bigfoot explorer, researcher, enthusiast, I guess. I couldn't find the footage again until recently. This is footage that he captured. It's a pretty solid piece of footage too. You get a good glimpse of the creature. It doesn't look like just some guy in a cheap gorilla costume either. There actually looks like some musculature underneath the fur, much like the famous Patterson footage, which is why that footage is so famous. It doesn't look like just a guy in a suit. Now, there is some shaky cam going on here, but I have a hard time imagining if you actually came across a giant ape in the middle of the forest that you'd be calm enough to do some nice smooth Stanley Kubrick level of camera work, so that doesn't bother me too much.